And it's also sort of in association with Think Rosniger, which many of you have attended, but many of you have not, because there's some phrases here I don't recognise. So it happens on the last Thursday of each month, and we had a discussion on the Menai Strait last night, but we've done George Orwell, and we've got some big names coming up. Lord Bigger and the leader of Plaid Cymru, Ryn, is coming up as well. So we're very keen to get more people involved. With your permission, which I just take as granted because there was no objection there, I will use all the emails in here, and we will distribute Think Rosniger notices to everyone who's given an email for this event. So welcome to Sine Waves Rosniger. The idea is to hear from people who've broken through with their talent into the national level from here, and to understand how they did it and what is going on in Welsh arts and North Wales arts in particular. And we've got two big Ynys Môn Anglesey success stories here. Tudur Owen has been performing for, sorry to say, decades in Welsh and English, and we'll talk about bilingualism a bit as well. He's had a big series on Radio 4. He's been on S4C a lot, and tells me he was on the comedy sort of circuit until he decided it was too grueling. and we're very glad to have him here. And we've got Elin Fflur, who is a songer and songwriter, also a lot on S4C, and is very prominent in the Welsh media. And we're very glad to have her here, also from Anglesey. So thank you both for coming. And just let's just hear a bit about you first. Elin, why don't you start and just tell us, you were telling me you were at school on Anglesey.
Yes.
And unaware of the world that was out there awaiting you.
Well, I suppose, yes. You know, I was brought up in a creative household, if you like. My mum, a teacher, but she was also a bit of a rock star back in the 70s in a band called Bran. Oh. But she was very, very musical, and it was around us everywhere. You know, I remember waking up on Sunday mornings and there'd be a choir in the lounge. You know, it was that kind of upbringing. And it was inevitable in a way that I would be heading into music anyway. My father was a teacher until I was about 10, and then he changed careers and went into social enterprise, which is also a very creative process, of course, as we all know. But to end up doing what I'm doing now, it wasn't anything I'd even dreamed of, to be honest. You know, I do remember recording on cassette tapes Hywel Gwynfryn on Radio Cymru many moons ago, and I used to learn the script, and then I used to record myself doing, you know, pretending to be a radio presenter. So it's quite a dream come true now that I've just started presenting for Radio Wales over the past year. But I think, you know, I went to university to study criminology and criminal justice, hoping to follow my great-grandfather's shoes, really, into the police world. Thankfully, North Wales Police are very happy that didn't happen. I would have been the worst policewoman in the history of...
but you did a degree in criminology.
Yes, well, I started a degree in criminology, but I'd won the Song for Wales competition on Fflur in 2002, and that opened this door to me into a world that I didn't know was available to me. And the TV work came, and I started presenting on Fflur. But what I was explaining to you earlier was maybe I wasn't that aware that here in North Wales we have 5 to 6 production companies that work very closely with Fflur and BBC Cymru Wales and create so much content, so incredible content about, you know, our stories, about Welsh heritage, about in our language as well. And it would have been beneficial, I think, for other people that were in the kind of same, had the same interest as me in school, to know that it was possible, that it was there as an option.
And do you think if anyone was at school today, at the age of 16, let's say, and sort of with creative ideas, would they be any more aware of what's out there or not?
I think so, yeah, probably. You know, the education system has changed quite a bit since I was there. There are many more modules and courses available to young people now. And I think apprenticeships and stuff like that people are much more aware of what's happening. And they go into schools to let them know of these different options, because as we all know, education isn't for everyone. So these things are just important, vitally important, to keep young people in North Wales as well. Because we tend to think, I don't know, Tudur, if you were like me when you were younger, you used to think that these things only were only in London maybe or in the big cities, but they're here, they're options for us, you know.
So before I turn to Tudur, let me just ask you about that, because I read a profile of you in one of the Liverpool papers, and you said that at one point...
I've made it! I'm going to retire happy.
and it said, you're quoted in it, saying that, you wondered about travelling the world and, you know, all those sort of ambitions that you might have had, and then you thought, well, no, actually, I'm really happy in Wales, Cardiff, or presumably some stuff you do up in North Wales. I don't know. So, tell us about that. That you're not looking for London.
No, I would never have survived there, to be honest with you. And I'm an Anglesey girl through and through. I don't want to go anywhere. I tried Cardiff, didn't like it that much. I wanted to come home. But it just doesn't have to be that. And I think that's what's important to young people to know, that you don't have to run to these big cities, you know. And the most amazing thing is, and we are going to talk about bilingualism in a minute. Sorry, I'm taking over. So
No, enjoying
but I've been able to work through the Welsh language up until the last year. I now work on Radio Wales every Friday, which is a new thing for me in English, but we'll get to that. But what's amazing is that I have been able to travel the world through my work. I've been to Patagonia to film documentaries. I have been to France to sing. I've been to Spain, Saudi Arabia. We went there together, actually. That's another story. But that's what's amazing, you know. We've always been led to believe that as a minority language, that you're not going to get very far.
It'll hold you back.
Yes, but it's not true. Yeah. You know, I've seen the world because of the work that I do through the Welsh language, and I think that's something to be... I think we should let young people around this country know that all these things are possible and there for them. These opportunities are there.
Tudur, tell us about your journey from a farm, I think, near here?
Yes, not too far.
Tell us where you were based and what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's been a convoluted journey from a farm about 3 miles as the crow flies to Rhosneigr Village Hall. It's been such a long way.
Now you've arrived.
And I can echo a lot of what Elin said. I have a lot of shared experiences in growing up on the farm. Now I realise that it was just the most idyllic upbringing. But when you're 13 and have visions of being the next Freddie Mercury, it was just hell on earth to be on this isolated part of Anglesey. And I did. It is quite a convoluted path that I took, and I was quite late coming into the business, the entertainment business, I suppose. And I think partly because of my agricultural background, and also because we're in Wales, and there is this, I think to this day, that there's a feeling that it's not really a proper job. You know what I mean? It's, and I still have this niggling feeling inside me. Maybe I should one day think of getting a proper job. And my father realised by the time I was 16 that I wasn't going to become a farmer. And thankfully, I have a brother who took over the farm, so that he then released me in a way to join the circus. And I found my way. Initially by working as a driver. It's worth noting I didn't get into the entertainment industry until in my late 20s, which is kind of quite late, I suppose. But my first employer was Bobby Williams in Elin Garage in Fflur. And if it wasn't for that experience in Elin Garage, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I started off as a runner for a production company who were making TV programmes in Carnarvon, and that's the best way to start because you get to make tea to people like Elin Fflur and things like that and drive people about, and you get to learn about the business from the bottom up. And I did that for a few years, and I became a studio floor manager, television studio floor manager, and that kind of gave me the opportunity to do what I knew I wanted to do, and that was to be in front of an audience. And so that's how I got to stand in front of an audience.
But that bit of it took you right around the UK?
Yes, eventually. I still worked as a floor manager. I went down to Cardiff, did some work in London, but it quickly I quickly realised after I'd started to stand up in front of an audience, and when you're a studio floor manager, you have to be able to entertain people for, if there are any technical difficulties, or when you welcome the audience to the studio, it's part of your job as a floor manager to keep people entertained. So that meant I had to prepare some material, and then one thing led to another, and I found myself doing stand-up comedy, and then that's what opened doors for me to become a writer and an actor and all the rest of it. But it was a kind of a slow process to begin with, but once that door opened, and I found myself in the Comedy Store and all over the country doing stand-up gigs, it was just quite a roller coaster ride then.
So now you're sort of doing that nationally, you have shows on Radio 4 and this kind of thing. Do you think that it's easier for someone, had you been brought up in a home in London, in some very artistic, connected family in the arts world, would it have been much easier than you experienced? I mean, do you think it is a disadvantage to come from communities which are not in the in near London or near Cardiff, getting those opportunities? It's
only a disadvantage because we let it be a disadvantage. It's a cliche, but it's all in the mind. And I think we are we have an advantage here being bilingual. As Elin said, we have production companies dotted around Wales, and so I think it's much easier, and we're there aren't as many obstacles for you to get. In reality, for you to get where you want to go, if you only have that confidence. Because when you look at the scene in London, I mean, I have hundreds of people I know who want to be actors, they want to be comedians, and they're swimming in this huge pool of talent. So competitive, so difficult. And I try to keep it quiet really here in Wales, because we don't fill the pool too much, do we? But we are blessed with having both languages, and that opens up a pathway to these two different cultures. I hadn't realised you could speak English so well, actually, but we have access to these two different worlds, the Welsh language world and the English language world, and I think both of us have been, taking advantage of that as best as we can.
So just to go back to, let's talk about this bilingualism a bit more then. When you say you went to Saudi and you've been doing these what have you been doing abroad, and was it in Welsh?
Yes. They were usually connected or held around St David's Day, well, Saudi Arabia was. We were both invited out there to perform.
Bizarre weekend.
It was a very bizarre weekend. But that was the nature of the visit, in a way. We were there to perform for the expats for a weekend. I was singing in Welsh and both in English, actually, and you did your comedy in both languages. But it's a gift, an absolute gift, to be able to speak two languages and to be able to speak this very old language. And I think it's a funny one because, we've just recently come home from Ibiza, where bilingualism, trilingualism even, is just such a normal thing. And if they struggle to speak English, we don't blink an eye. We just converse and we don't judge. But here in Wales, if you're unable to speak English properly, and if you forget a word, well, you kick yourself a month. If I did it publicly on telly or radio, I would hide in my bedroom for months, But it's a silly, silly way of thinking because it's who we are. The Welsh language is my first language. English is my second language. I'm able to speak both fluently, yes, but I do have to think a little bit more when I converse with you here. And think of the words. But it's funny with the second language, I suppose. With the second language comes some self-doubt. And imagining myself, it took me 40 years to find the courage to ask to work in English.
Okay.
And this might sound very silly, but I think there's something about us as Welsh speakers as well. I think we're conditioned to believe that it's the second language. That it comes in second to everything else, doesn't it? To every language, which is ridiculous. But I don't believe that, by the way. I don't believe it, but I think we're conditioned to think that way in a way.
But if there was that anxiety before, you say you got a show on Radio Wales in English.
Yeah.
Right. So has that changed? Now you're doing it?
Yes. Because I put my... Yeah. And it is silly, and Tudur's view on this might be completely different to mine. I can only speak from my personal experience of being bilingual, and it's my issue more than it is a generalised view of everybody in Wales. This is just the way I think, by the way. I'm sure Tudur's different to me. But it did take me a lot of... It was, you know, it took me a lot of guts to make that call, to ask if I could come in and speak to them at Radio Wales. Would you give me an opportunity in English? But I thought, bugger it, I got to do it. I'm 40, you know, this is ridiculous.
And it worked.
And I want to challenge myself, and I did it, and it's fine. If only I knew it 10 years ago.
And I do agree with you. It is a gift, and we are doubly blessed to have both these languages. And it is, again, it's down to our confidence. The reason I started off doing stand-up in the Welsh language because, like you, it's my first language, and it's the language I kind of think, and I realised doing stand-up why it's called your first language, because when you have to improvise in Welsh, I can improvise that much quicker than I can in the English language. It takes a nanosecond for the responses to come. But if I get heckled in English, there's just this half a second slower for me to respond, and half a second on the stage in a comedy club feels like an hour. So, and the reason I did start doing it in English was because I needed to get better at doing stand-up. And doing it in Welsh, there's only, you know, there are only so many people you can do it to as an audience, because, let's face it, there aren't very many of us, you know, about to have as our audience. So for me to get better at doing stand-up, at doing comedy, I realised I had to make that decision of doing it in English and going to one of the best comedy circuits in the world, which is the UK comedy circuit. It's just an incredible thing, and we have access to it. And it was a big leap to do. And I remember going for a couple of years doing open spots, which mean you have to do 10 minutes of stand-up all around the country for nothing, to kind of earn your kind of stripes in a way. And then after that, it meant that I was out then 4 or 5 times a week doing comedy and getting better at it, which then meant that I could come back to Wales and do it in Welsh that much better. So I used the English language to get better at doing what I'm doing, and then hopefully I've been able to use that experience for my Welsh language work and just raise the quality of what I do.
But presumably on that UK comedy circuit, there'll be lots of people from all over the world who are doing it in second language. You won't be alone in that.
No, that's absolutely true. There were, yes, people. I have a good friend of mine, Ignacio Lopez. He's Spanish, Welsh, English. Kiri Pritchard McLean is another famous Anglesey exponent of the arts, and she's been doing such good work about promoting the Welsh language and the Welsh culture. And she now is kind of an upside down world, my world upside down. She's now doing it in her second language, which is the Welsh language, and it's incredible to see. So yeah, it's been so worthwhile having both these languages, because I just feel I have this advantage. And also doing comedy, I used to be known as the Welsh bloke, the Welsh guy. And that always kind of helped me, really, because there was a shorthand, and I could use my Welshness as part of my comedy, because wherever you go in England, you know, they have a relationship with Wales, and I always remember saying I am from the island of Anglesey, which puts me on a sticky wicket to begin with, because most of you here will have been on a particularly disappointing camping holiday to where I live. So it's that kind of thing, you know, and I use that kind of self-deprecating thing that we have in Wales, I think, to my advantage, I hope.
So just to say, I will be putting a microphone out, so if people have got questions, start thinking about them. But just before I do that, you're talking about basically the advantages that the Welsh language gave you in helping break through and finding an audience, and then you've both sort of moved on and using what you've learned in other contexts. So that was an advantage almost of coming from Anglesey. When you think about the infrastructure that's here, I mean, not just this Welsh language aspect of it, but you say there are production companies. Are there any in Anglesey? Are they North Wales? And is there a Welsh government system that competes with the Arts Council? I don't know whether the Arts Council funds Wales directly, or are there funding arrangements, structures in place to help people get started and break through and make and sort of make the most of their creative talent?
Well, Elin can talk about the music industry better than I can. But there are bodies that are there. We have a wonderful Theatr Cymru, which used to be called the National Theatre Cymru. It's now called Theatr Cymru. And there's a new artistic director in Theatr Cymru now. He's called Steffan Donnelly. He's an Anglesey boy from Llanfairpwll, and I think he's an absolute genius. Because he commissioned me to write a play recently. He helped me a lot. Well. He helped me a lot. Yeah, I put on a play recently, and he helped me a lot to do that. So we've got theatre. There's the Arts Council in Wales. There are there's lots of little pots of money all over the place. And the thing is, we need it. We need that funding in Wales, not just for the Welsh language, but for both languages, because I do sometimes feel that the industry in Wales, and I'm talking about the BBC more than anything here now, I think there's a huge tranche of people in Wales, if they speak Welsh or English, I sometimes think they're disenfranchised by what's on television here in Wales, because we have the BBC, we have ITV, but I'm not sure, and I don't think that what's seen on the screen reflects what's going on the ground here in Wales. Certainly it doesn't reflect the bilingual society that we live in. And as most of you will know, we changed from Welsh to English, during the day, and we coexist. And I think that's not shown, that's not mirrored in our TV programmes.
I completely agree with you, because I think, but again, I think it comes back to not having enough confidence in ourselves as a nation, almost to shout a bit more about ourselves. But there's not enough funding either to do it. But I often think of identity when it comes to Wales. We're behind, the Scots, the Irish. They're so much more known across the world than we are. And we've got a long, long way to go. And we were speaking about this earlier, about these big production companies coming in. I don't know enough about grants or anything, Owen, to be honest, to tell you much about that. All I know is there's never enough money to push what we do here, what we have here in the Welsh language, and the English as well. But I think when these big production companies come into this country, and they've just been to Llanddwyn to do House of Dragon, what's the legacy? There is no legacy. There is nothing. I don't even know if they use local people or local talents on these productions. And I think you're speaking of infrastructure. No, there's not enough. There's not enough studio space here. There's not enough post-production facilities here. But that's where they should give a pot of money so we can work on that and we can tell our own stories. Imagine if Lloyd George was Scottish, Irish, there'd be movies about him around the world. We're just not shouting enough. And I don't know what is that money, is that, I don't know what that is, but we seriously need to work a bit more of telling our own stories.
To be fair, they did pay my brother an obscene amount of money to use one of his fields as a car park.
Oh, there we are. Then all is forgiven.
The House of Dragon people.
Yeah. Good. He was very happy.
No, just pushing back on what you said about the BBC, and not because I work for them and defend them in any way. Most people don't speak Welsh in Wales, and what, 75% don't speak Welsh. So how reflective would it be if Welsh television was more bilingual?
Well, it would mirror what's going on in our country, and I'm not just talking about the 25% of people who speak Welsh, who I feel aren't represented, but also there's the rest of people in Wales aren't represented by what we see on our television screens, by the BBC and by the ITV especially. When you look at the output from BBC in Cardiff, their flagship shows are Doctor Who and Gavin and Stacey, which has a kind of Welsh flavour to it, I suppose, but it really doesn't reflect the way we live, especially in North Wales. And as Elin says, it's that identity that gets lost behind these big shows. And I think that the entertainment industry can do so much to help with identity and with kind of
confidence.
National confidence.
Yeah. I mean, what about S4C though? I think the most expensive per head language, most expensive TV per head in the world,
Yeah.
I think. Yes, it is incredibly heavily subsidised, and it is trying to address the issues you're talking about to some extent. I'm also thinking, what would it be like, what would this conversation be like in Cornwall or in Yorkshire or in other places that, get the odd sitcom that we base there, a bit like Gavin and Stacey, but not much more than that.
We're fortunate, aren't we?
Yeah, we are fortunate.
of Fflur.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think we should have to fight for it. It's something that we should have, and Fflur is, and I'm going to protect Fflur now because they they pay me money to do what I do, but I think they do give him again, there's work to do there, I suppose, but it is a truer reflection of, there are some dramas now, for example, they're bilingual, they're more of a true reflection of what our communities look like and sound like. But in terms of BBC and stuff, I agree as well in terms of regional accents. I think is something, for a long time I was worried about speaking English publicly or professionally, say, in terms of worried about my accents, that I sounded like,
And I would counter that as well by saying that look at broadcasting in England in the 70s, where you had all these different, Tyne Tees television, London Weekend television, and all these regional...
which are now weaker, right?
I don't think they're there, are they?
Gone. Yeah.
They've gone, haven't they?
Yeah,
And I think there's a really, really good book by Caroline Lucas, who's to be the head of the Green Party, and she's... I can't remember the name of the book, but it's a really amazing book about the identity of England and the regions of England, and how that is a good example of what's happened and how things have become homogenised, and many people in England feel as though they've lost their identity as well. So the only thing that separates us from them is the language.
That's interesting, yes, because you could almost say that the amount of American TV now is swamping English culture.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Have we got the microphone? Where is the microphone? I'm thinking that some hands might be going up. Yes. So there's one over there on the far side from Mark. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Really good conversation. I'm only English speaking, I'm afraid. But I'm aware that the creative industry in the UK brings in billions of pounds to the exchequer. It's one of the big outputs of the UK now, alongside maybe services, but not manufacturing. It's manufacturing of creative stuff that's really we're really good at, and you two are obviously proponents of. But the question that I was interested in is, being bilingual, does that give you a creative spark on a different dimension to being monolingual? Does one part of it actually help infect the other part? I think, Tudur, you were starting to speak to that a little bit in terms of what English brought to your Welsh, but what I was just wondering is whether the amalgam of the two actually gives you more spark to generate that creativity.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I was saying, I think I'm doubly blessed, and having both these languages, they kind of cross-pollinate each other, and they just give me, an extra palette of stuff to be able to work with to create, drama or characters or comedy. So yeah, I think I'm definitely at an advantage, and I'm able to offer a different kind of flavour. My Radio 4 stuff recently was very Welsh in its kind of theme, and the feedback I was getting from that was that it was quite refreshing for people to hear this Welsh theme, and not from, dare I say it, Cardiff and south of the M4. A Welsh theme from a part of Wales that a lot of people don't know about.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Is there, with all these cultural divisions and sort of nuances we're talking about, is there a division between South Wales and North Wales in terms of the? I mean, do you feel?
Do you feel? I'm only joking.
Do you just need to check who's in the room.
It's just Anglesey on the mainland, to be honest with you, Owen. That's it for me.
Tell me about working in Cardiff.
Well, I haven't worked much in... my work takes me all over Wales, and I'm so very fortunate because I worked on the Henno programme for many, many years as a reporter, so I used to travel North Wales extensively. I know all of it, okay? You ask me anything, I know everywhere in North Wales. But I've just been very, very fortunate to travel this beautiful country of ours, and I've never experienced, anything where I feel like I'm not at home when I'm in South Wales.
You don't feel that?
No, I love the whole of Wales. I know where my home is. I know where to lay my feet, and I know where I want to be. But there is, and I suppose it's more politically charged than it is in terms of people getting along with each other. I think it's, people of North Wales maybe feel unfairly treated sometimes in terms of funding and all sorts of stuff,
And again, you can draw a comparison with England and
yes,
London.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
It's the same thing. It's a very similar situation, I think.
Yeah. There's a question at the back, yeah.
My question is a bit more personal.
Oh.
Do you dream in English and Welsh? And is there a pattern if you do both?
I can't tell you about my dreams, I'm sorry. Oh, we're entering dangerous territory. I don't know. I must be dreaming Welsh, I don't know. I remember Hywel Gwynfryn said on the BAFTA stage that somebody always used to ask him, do you think in Welsh? And he said, no. I think in English because I don't have to think in Welsh. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah. I think I dream bilingually, I think. Yes. I must do. Yeah, that's a good question, though. I'll try and remember it in the morning.
Leave your email. We'll get back to you.
First of all, thanks, guys, I think we're extraordinarily privileged to have you guys in our village hall. Oh. And thanks for this tour.
Oh, thank you.
But here's my question, and it's you, Tudur, I'm afraid. When you are doing stand-up, obviously doing stand-up, you will direct your material to whoever you think is in the audience, so you will temper. But my question is, gag for gag, have a Welsh audience got the same sense of humour as an English audience, for instance?
Yes, we laugh at the same things. Of course we do. Yeah. We're all human, and we all laugh at the same things. Make a fart noise, normally people will laugh at a fart noise, wherever you are. There are regional differences. The thing with doing it in Wales, for me, is that when I walk onto a stage in Wales, especially for a Welsh audience, half the job is done already because they know me and they know they can trust me. When I walk on stage in Hartlepool, I have to work really hard for the first 10, 20 seconds to make them trust me. So that's the difference. But then once, if they do trust me, then they laugh at the same things and they laugh at the same joke. It's just a different... In the Welsh language, my material is totally different to English language material because there's a kind of a shorthand that we have in Wales. I can talk about stuff that I know that people can identify with, and that's one of the main jobs of a comedian, is for the audience to be able to identify with what they're saying. And again, in the Welsh language, I can talk about things that we're all familiar with, the language and our relationship with the country next door, that kind of thing, and we're all in tune. We all know what we're talking about. Whereas in the English language, I've had to be a bit more inventive and a bit cleverer over the years to write material that will work just as well on the stage in the Comedy Store in Piccadilly as it would in the Stand in Newcastle.
Yeah, and the self-deprecation weapon which many comics use, is the level of that higher if you're performing to an English audience or a Welsh one? Sorry for asking these.
No, I love that question because I was speaking to Ellis James, a dear friend of mine, who's a brilliant comedian, and we were comparing notes really on the fact that we create these personas when we're on stage, and we both of us are kind of on the back foot. We're kind of back foot comedy, on the back foot comedy. It's this self-deprecating, and I think it's in us. It's just this Welsh thing of ours because we are a minority. We're a very small country, stuck onto the side of a huge country. And so I think that's kind of by osmosis over the years has ingrained into us that we have to know our place and that kind of thing. So we use that self-deprecation, I think, especially in Alice's case, to really good effect. And Rod Gilbert is another one who's really good at doing it.
What about singing in Wales and singing in England?
It's just the same. People,
Just the same.
just the same, yeah.
Okay.
And what's interesting is how if I do sing in English in England and if they have no grasp of the language, they enjoy it just the same. Music is music, it's a
Right.
feeling, it's a...
You can express it in Welsh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it expresses emotion. You don't always have to understand the language, and all music doesn't have words anyway. It's all about feeling and emotion. So, yeah, but I love singing in Welsh in England. It's great.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Thanks, guys. How are you, or can you speak to at all the kind of mindset or the mood of artists in North Wales or in Wales in general coming through today? Because is that any different to when you guys were coming through? Is there a kind of different mood or a different, vibe going on with coming through and being an artist either in Welsh or bilingually or yeah? Can you speak to that at all?
I think it's very different now. I think it's the internet, it's social media. I think it's very exciting. I think there's a lot of people in the, they film their own content now on TikTok. You can be a filmmaker from your bedroom these days. It's so different to when I was starting out. And the same with music. You can self-promote much easier. You can reach audiences much easier. But then, as Tudur mentioned earlier, the pool just gets bigger and bigger. So it's harder to stand out, I think. So even though there's good bits about it, there are also bad bits about it. But I do think the creative industry in North Wales, I think it's exciting here. There's lots going on, People always talk about it's all happening in Cardiff, but actually, if we really look, there is a lot happening here as well. Going back to those big production companies that come here, but I'm banging on about this because I think it's something that we do need to make more of a connection with. We need more connection points. We need people to not just use us as a backdrop in Wales, and invest in our young people because there's so much talent out there, and we just need. We just need to help them get to these places, really. But yeah, in terms of that, it's changed completely, Shell. And I can hardly do Instagram, so I don't know how I would survive. Really, trying to start now.
But is that? I mean, this may be not something you know about, but when you talk about these production companies basically coming, using the scenery and leaving, is that something that the council could insist on, make conditionality about? I don't know if the council's giving permission for these people to do these things.
Yeah,
Is there some role for local politicians and officials to be saying to these companies, look, you're very welcome, but...
Yeah, I'd happily do that. I'd happily do that job. Listen, you can come in, but you have to do this before you leave.
Yeah. Well, it
No,
happens on
but
building houses. I don't know whether it happens on...
Yeah,
this sort of
I'm sure.
project,
I'm
yeah,
sure there is. I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm
Well,
hoping there would be.
To be fair, I did something for Warner Brothers recently for the crew of House of Dragon. They were all staying in, Surf Snowdonia place in Llanrwst, the old Hilton Hotel there. Most of the crew was staying there, and they have a department they look after the well-being of the crew. And as part of that, they thought it'd be a good idea, and it was a good idea, to have an evening of talking about the culture of Wales and the Welsh language. Unfortunately, they asked me to do it, and it was a bit tricky. It was a tough gig because they'd all just come from a really long day's work filming in Llanddwyn or somewhere.
Well, that cheers me up, though, to know that.
And yeah, it was a nice thing to do, but I absolutely died on my behind.
Well, I'm not happy
Well,
to
because
hear
they were
that.
having supper, and the last thing they wanted to hear was a 58-year-old comedian talking about how to say S and S and things like that.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Can I just echo what everybody said? Thank you so much for coming to our little village. Just to touch on something you did mention before, I think a couple of the favourite series that we've seen in recent years was Hinterland, and I think was it Death in the Valley or Death Valley. both of which were extremely entertaining dual language drama comedy. Why do you think it's such a limited focus of the production companies? Wouldn't it be a wonderful way of introducing people who are not familiar with the Welsh language as a way in to getting familiar with Welsh and developing an interest in it, so that you lead them in gently, and obviously tremendous entertainment as well?
I 100% agree with you, and it's one of my bugbears that these, and they are really good productions, Hinterland, you mentioned, and they're produced what they call back-to-back. They will film the scene in Welsh, and they'll film the scene in English, and they'll put out the Welsh series, and they'll put out the English series, and I really think they're missing a trick where they should be mirroring what's happening in our communities, where the Welsh and the English live together side by side, and I only wait, and I know why S4C are reticent to do it, because it is a Welsh language, a Welsh language channel.
They don't want English.
No, because and they have to.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do get that, but I do think they're missing a trick where these popular dramas could be done in both Welsh and English. We're all used to reading subtitles these days when we watch our series, and I just think it would be an amazing tool to just. And it's so frustrating for me to have to try and build bridges between both languages. It would be so much better.
That is interesting. So tell us about that. There's a sort of a view, is there, that they just shouldn't have any English on the channel?
Well, it's a Welsh language channel.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a big argument about artists singing in English at the Eisteddfod. It's the same kind of, it's a week of the year where we celebrate the Welsh language and culture and our heritage. And I get it, and I am, I am a proud Welsh language speaker, and I fully agree with it. But also, as I mentioned earlier, introducing the way we speak every day, introducing and being a true reflection of how we live, which is bilingually. We do, I do predominantly speak Welsh. Yes, I do. Every now and again, you have to speak English, and that's just the reality of how we live within our communities. But to go back to that question, Dav James, the writer I recently interviewed, he wrote a fantastic production for the BBC called Lost Boys and Fairies, and it was the first BBC drama to adael y Gymraeg, how do you say that in English?
Welsh community.
Oedd yr iaith anna fo am tro cynta. So where you heard the Welsh language for the first time. So yeah, it was the first one ever for the BBC network to show. So it stood there side by side. But this was last year, this was 2024, and it wasn't a long conversation, but it was there and it was to be heard, and it was heard naturally as something that happens naturally within our communities, and it was groundbreaking, really. It was a new thing, and he was very, very proud and grateful to the BBC, who I should, which is great that they did this, but we shouldn't have to feel grateful for that, because it's part of how we live and who we are.
Because there is a worry that, when we do open that door and have both languages side by side on our programmes, that we are opening the door and we are diluting the Welsh language. And that is a worry, and it's a concern that I share, because as some of you know, I bang on about Welsh place names and the importance of Welsh place names. So it's almost hypocritical of me to say that, that we need to have programmes reflecting the way we live, but I do think it's important. And in the long run, I think if it's done well, and if it's done carefully, it'll have a lasting legacy, because the future of the language is our young people and our education system. And if people realise that you can have both languages in your life and it's not going to hold you back, I think that will mean eventually that our society, our community as we know it now, this bilingual, wonderful community will last for the future.
I have a very short supplementary. Do you watch Round Around?
Yes.
Yes, it's brilliant. It's very, very good.
Yeah, there's a question at the back there.
Thanks. And thank you for your talk. It's been very interesting. Picking up on your topic of whether they should have subtitled programs as well. when you travel around Europe, I find that the countries where they do that, where they will, because they show endless US movies and UK movies and US music and UK music, whatever. The Netherlands, for instance, everyone is pretty much bilingual, English and Dutch. And there they show English programs in English rather than subtitled and with subtitles. So that has expanded the English language substantially in that country. So it strikes me that if S4C was doing that here and having that mix of languages and showing subtitles on the Welsh parts, it would open up those programs to a substantially larger market and expose the Welsh language to a substantially larger market, and might actually make it popular rather than, as you say, not doing so and keeping it just for the Welsh community.
The only thing I'd say there is that I do think that S4C, their priority is the people of Wales in Wales, and there is an onus on the BBC, on BBC Wales, or the BBC in general, to, we're talking about S4C allowing English onto their programmes. There's an onus on the BBC to allow Welsh onto their programmes as well, which is just as important, I think.
Yeah, and whichever entity it is that does it, I just think it might just
Absolutely.
open up greater access to the language.
And when you look at the network that the BBC have and the way that they would be able to promote, if we're talking about something like Hinterland, which has been sold all over the world, and had that Welsh language element to it with subtitles, it would have been, I think, so much richer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So, big part of this music festival is trying to engage young people and trying to get them to engage in the arts, or if they have an aspiration to be in the arts, to give them a platform or opportunities to do that. So Michelle and I have been doing that with some of the musicians. Gethin and Will are both studying and volunteering, and everyone that we've met and that we've worked with has been as good as anyone we've ever worked with in London or anywhere else. It's not charity, these guys are doing a great job tonight. And the musicians we've worked with have been brilliant as well, but they seem to lack a network. And we were lucky enough to study in Liverpool, and when we left university, people would ask us, how do you meet people? And we'd be like, I have no idea. We just went to uni and it just happened. And then the people that we've been working with here also seem to ask the same question, don't they? Is there a network around North Wales for creatives, whether it's separate from each other in music, acting, comedy, whatever? If not, how do we grow that, or how do we find it? And do you feel like you have to leave to come back, or can you just grow it here?
How would you go about building a network for all these different? I mean, because they're such different areas, aren't they? Theatre, music, whatever. But
I know what you mean, but I think we were talking about Kiri earlier. Kiri's created this kind of comedy academy now, hasn't she?
Yep.
And she's an incredibly busy lady, but sometimes you need a Kiri. They say it takes a busy person to start these things, but I think that's incredible, because that's like creates a little hub but that's for people with interest in comedy. Yes. I'm not saying. But there's also things like, your children have created a website where you can find all of every Welsh gig. Every gig that's happening in Wales is all on this website that Tudur's children have created, and it's incredible, by the way. If you check it out, it's called Awni, AWNI. It means we'll go. I mean, I know it's not a meeting point, but at least it's somewhere that you can, if you know that there's a gig on, if you go onto this website, you'll probably find people then with the same hobbies as you as you go to listen to these bands. But it is hard, I think. Going back to what I was saying at the beginning, when I was at school, I didn't know that these companies, that this would be an option as a career. I do think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of shouting a bit louder about what we have here, about connecting with each other a little better. But how to do that? I'm sorry, Alex. I'm no Kiri. I don't know. Have you got any idea?
Well, I'm quite optimistic, and I do think it's much better than it used to be. Certainly in the last 20 years. When we started off doing stand-up comedy, there were precious little stand-up comedy. When I did my first ever gig in the Eisteddfod in Llanbedr Goch in in the Glanravon Hotel in Benllech. There were only
Big night.
4 blokes doing it with me. And the scene in Wales now is much better because we have, I think it's fair I think I'm right in saying that we have more women stand-up comedians in the Welsh language than men, which is brilliant, and they're all doing it in Welsh and English. People like Kiri, there's somebody called Jen Collier from Dainiolen. She's absolutely brilliant. So it's a much better scene than it was. So and it seems to be self kind of propagating in a way. It seems to be growing exponentially every year. As far as the music is concerned, it's not my subject, but I will say that I've just come. Last weekend, I was in Sesiwn Fawr Dolgella, which is an annual music festival, and it was absolutely amazing. Thousands of people there enjoying Welsh music, Welsh rock music, Welsh folk music. So the scene, the Welsh language music scene, I think is really exciting. Yeah, and it is going on, but it does need help because, again, economies of scale and if you rely purely on the numbers, we just don't have the audience there.
No, but putting on these events as well, it's a good thing that they're happening, yes. And in places like this as well, on the coastline of Anglesey, where it's just really good to see that these kind of things are happening and there's a mix of different artists taking part. It's all good, and it will create that connection without even realising it really. But yeah, more events, more things happening.
Thank you.
Noswaith dda. Dwi'n dod o'r Ysneiger. I come from Ysneiger originally. Ac dwi'n musician, dwi'n Wenglish rwan achos dwi wedi bod yn byw yn Mryste am 30 blwyddyn a dwi wedi symud yn ôl. So I've just moved back from Bristol. I was lucky enough when I was younger to work with Godwell, who's just left, who had a production studio here. And then I was working with David Wrench, who's now quite a famous producer. With David Wrench. Yeah. It was that step up working with Godwell and Cymraeg, canu and Cymraeg, singing Welsh techno, the first Welsh techno record, I think. This is back in 1989, yeah. That gave me the inspiration to carry on with music because I was very intimidated about Eisteddfodau, the Eisteddfods, because I don't like competition that much. And there's very much a feeling that if you're going to get on in music, you have to be part of the Eisteddfods. And I hated that. I hated that competition. So it was that producer helping me to step up that made me become. I went on to university, became a musician. Now I'm a music teacher, a dwi wedi symud yn ôl, a I'm teaching music back in Anglesey rwan. So I didn't make it like you did. However, that is my career now. So I feel like I would like to know as a teacher how to get in touch with music producers who are wanting to support the youth that want to do it, that don't want to go down the Eisteddfod route.
But you say that, I mean, the Eisteddfod, of course, the competitive stage is there.
Yeah.
But then there's much more to the Eisteddfod now. It's not just about competitions, it's about... there are many stages, aren't there?
Yeah, it's a festival.
It's a festival, yeah. It's a festival now. So it's incredible for new artists.
Yeah, so the people that need to be seen can be seen there.
Yeah.
So is that
how
actually
do you contact them? I would like to know more information about that as well. I know I'm not putting the pressure on you to tell me that now, but
course,
for teachers who are teaching music like myself now, how do we, get people involved in that, young people? That's something I don't know, and I'm a teacher teaching in Bangor at the moment. So I think
it's a hard question.
Interesting. Yeah,
I think for young people, I think you're either, if you're interested in it, you're going to start a band, and when you start a band, you meet another band and you make friends, and then you build on that, I suppose, creating a kind of connection between everyone. I see exactly what you're both asking. I think it's just, it's a hard one.
I know you've been quite involved in the Eisteddfod. Is that a forum for this? I mean, is that a mechanism by which people can make the connections? And
it's where everybody that's probably within the creative world of Wales, they gather every week. Yeah.
Are you involved in that? Even now that you've heard it's less competitive than it used to be?
Yeah. I mean, I prepare children to go and
Okay,
yeah. But if you'd go and just...
remember feeling how intimidating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
without having to be in competition as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I think record production companies would be brilliant, you know, involved.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, just a couple of observations, really. I'm very involved have been in the entertainment business, and I'm a great believer that talent will out, which is evidenced on the stage tonight. But it is always, always challenging from wherever you come from. I think it is daunting. You just heard there how daunting that is. I think schools have a huge role to play, and culture in schools, whether it's in Wales or elsewhere, is challenging. You know, budgets have been cut, but it is really, really important because it's that teacher giving somebody the confidence to put themselves out there, be singing, comedian, writing, and then if you do that, you know, I've been to every Edinburgh Fringe Festival for 49 years. This year will be my 49th, and you just go around and people will have got the bottle to have done something. Some of it's shit, and some of it's great.
I know that.
You know, and it doesn't matter. And everybody's very sympathetic to the people who find it difficult. And they can be, you know, awful. I remember seeing Bob Mortimer's first show when he was doing with Vic Reeves in a little club in Deptford in London. And Bob was so awful. He was a solicitor, and he said, I'm a really bad solicitor, and I'm a really bad comedian, but I love Jim Moyer, Vic Reeves. And Bob's now a national treasure in a way. Very nervous guy. Very difficult time at university, hardly left his room, but somehow he was coaxed, partly by meeting a partner, to say you get somebody, you meet like-minded people. And you've just got to, you know, let's say the schools and university is a great platform, be it technical or be it performance or be it any aspect of the culture to do. And I think we have an amazingly creative culture in Wales and in broader Britain, actually, and what Michael Sheen's doing for the Welsh Theatre is phenomenal. And what they've done in rebuilding Theatre Clwyd and what they've got in Bangor, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of confidence, but it's always going to be daunting in early stages. And hearing both of your stories, amazing what you've done. And we've just all got to encourage other people to follow your paths. And I work with Kiri. Kiri is part of my agency, and she is great. And so more Kiris, I agree with that.
I remember the first time I went up to Edinburgh, somebody told me that. Somebody said, if you're good, they will find you. And I realised it's absolute bollocks at the time because there was so many good acts there and they were just drowning in this huge pool. But going back to what I said earlier, I think in Wales, that is more true. Is that a sentence? It is true because if they're good, there's a better chance to be found in Wales, I think. You know, because talent is talent. And if they're good, be it musical, comedy talent, and if they're doing it bilingually, even better. Because they will be found. There are many pathways for them in Wales, and that's why I was saying earlier we're so blessed.
Hi. I just want to counter that to say that North Wales remains one of the most underfunded areas of the whole of the UK. It's actually deprived as far as access to the arts is concerned for young people, trainee people. And I don't really have a question, I have a statement that is to hear that the House of Dragons filmed on Llanwyn, and did they have any local people as trainees, as runners, people getting involved? Was there any opportunity? Is anyone at government level reaching out and saying, yes, there's a big commercial company coming in, let's get 10 people from the local community on that film set, getting the experience that they won't get anywhere else?
Yeah, I think, to be fair to Warner Brothers HBO, they do have a programme of employing local people, but invariably they're employed as...
It's not enough.
I know, but they're invariably employed as security personnel or emptying bins, that kind of thing. So, yes, I know. And I don't think that's a unique problem to Wales. I think a film set in Yorkshire or Scotland would complain about exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Loveday. Just to follow up on that, we know from personal experience they were advertising locally for people to be interviewed and go through a process to take part in production on the local part. So So as far as I know, yes, there were, but they needed to drive.
We do have some extras. We have some people.
Well, but this was on. We know from personal experience within the family that they were looking for production people, runners, and so on. So they were actively and doing the recruitment. The interviews were taking place in Carnarvon. So yes, it was local people that were interested in getting.
When you're talking about opportunities for creatives, I think we need to look upstream and look at our schools, as you were saying, and our colleges. We have the wonderful Royal College of Music and Drama in Cardiff, which is world renowned, but we need more, especially as you were saying, in North Wales.
And I think there is much more by now. It is developing as we speak. A friend of mine works closely with apprenticeships as well, and I was asking her before coming tonight what's happening within the creative arts in Wales, and she, there's many things happening at the moment. I think it's just a matter of time, maybe. And Skill Cymru as well is another kind of apprenticeship kind of thing, isn't it? Because my cousin recently has just been doing some camera and focus pulling workshops with them. So there is stuff happening, but I totally get what you mean. This was my point at the beginning, these companies coming in. I think we do need more of a connection point between them and what's happening here on grassroots level. And hopefully it'll happen in time, but there are things happening, that's the point. And hopefully they'll move quickly.
Can I just put my brother Peter on the spot? I mean, is that something when film companies come into an area? I mean, you've done that, I guess, sending a production team into, let's say, a rural part of the UK, Wales or elsewhere. Are there ever conditions put on that, saying, look, we want you to do stuff for the local community, or does that never happen?
Well, I think it can happen. With the big companies, but on the whole, they're pretty tight little units. Crews on films, and they're unbelievably professional. And you'll see build in and doing what you're developing, and that's the way you go. I think there's an increasing awareness of the need for training. The BBC have taken the bulk of training for all aspects of music, writing, performing. So they've been really, really pretty good over the time. I think other companies, it's a sort of, they probably do need a bit of compulsion to do it. But it's good to hear about, HBO, Warner Brothers advertising for that. 10 would be too many apprenticeships on a film shoot in a day. Too much. 5, 4. Well, maybe, 4. Because there's a huge, duty of care. But I think anybody involved in the business is, who's committed to it, is aware that training is a really important part of the agenda. And you do it. I run an agency, we have trainees the whole time.
Any other questions? Yes.
If there isn't any, I just would like to end by saying, talking about production companies and things like that, the unsung heroes in the room tonight are those two young lads in the corner. Yeah. There's not been one technical hiccup. You smashed it. Well done. Thank you very much, guys.
Well, also, I mean, I think it'd be appropriate, we can't all be thanking each other, but I think it is appropriate to say that Alex and Shell have done a brilliant thing putting on this festival, and it is obviously a good thing. It is ticking a lot of the boxes that we're talking about tonight in terms of encouraging people and getting them connected with other people. So to you and Helen, who've organised all this, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there we are. So that's it. I don't know where which pub everyone's going to, but we'll see you there. And thank you very much.
Tudur's buying. Hannar big and much.
Is that the time?
Thank you very much. Thank you.